Hi, my name is James Cox, and I'm the Director of the Metabolomics Core here at the University of Utah. In this video, I'll be discussing some basic metabolomics sample facts. This presentation will cover the first steps needed to start a metabolomics project, also cover how to collect samples, the number of biological replicates you will need for good statistics, the amount of biological matrix needed, how to submit samples to the core, and what to expect post-submission. The first step is to contact the core staff for advice if this is a new project. We will walk you through the details of metabolomics and determine if this project is even feasible. Below are the various contact information for each service we offer. All this information and their contact information is also on our website as well. The second step is to set up a billing account. This is easily accessed from the core's webpage at cores.utah.edu. Click on the work authorization form shown here, and click on whichever tab applies to you, either on campus or off campus. If there's some confusion on how this works, we even have a how-to video shown here on this tab. Now let's discuss important aspects in sample preparation. Sampling needs to be cold, fast, and consistent. It is important to freeze metabolism at the point of sampling. This is most commonly done by rapidly freezing a sample into liquid nitrogen or adding very cold extraction solvent to the sample. It is also really important that sampling be done quickly as well. But overall, by far the most important aspect of sampling is consistency. I do realize that preparing samples by quickly quenching metabolism can be difficult, and this leads me to the most important rule for sample preparation. Do all sampling the same exact way every day. If sectioning tissue, be consistent, use the same area of tissue. For example, use the same lobe of liver for all samples. Below are several review articles covering these sampling processes. Another frequently asked question we receive is, what is the number of biological replicates needed for good data? This really depends on the biological complexity of the model system being analyzed. In general, the more genetically, metabolically homogeneous an organism is, the lower the number of biological replicates are needed. An example of a highly homogeneous model system is the fly. They're highly inbred and all are fed the same diet. Relatively few replicates are needed to generate great data. This also holds well for the cell culture system. The converse is also true. The more complex, genetically, metabolically heterogeneous the organism is, the more samples are required. Mice are more complex than the fly and require at least 6 biological replicates for good data. Due to the complexity of man, hundreds to thousands of samples are needed to generate useful data. Importantly, for statistical analysis software, we need an absolute minimum of 3 samples. Occasionally, a sample is lost through the process, so we always recommend a minimum of 4 biological replicates. Another important question we receive is how much sample is needed for good data. Listed below are some good starting places for each sample type, but really you need to contact the core prior to submission to get a good idea of how much samples you need to submit. And most importantly, you must accurately weigh and aliquot your samples prior to submission. If you don't, then the core will charge you $100 an hour to do this, and this will greatly delay your project. Now that you have your samples collected and frozen safely down at minus 80 degrees Celsius, how do you submit them to the core? Well, we have several forms for researchers to fill out that can be found on our website. First, go to the main core's website at cores.utah.edu, and then click on the HSC Cores tab, where you will find the Metabolomics core listed. From here, you will see the following page with 2 very important forms. One is the sample submission form, the second is the sample details form. The sample submission form needs to be fully filled out prior for your project to be analyzed. We must have the chart field, the PI's email, your name and your email, and the institution you're at, and your contact phone number before we'll start processing your samples. Lower down the sample submission form, please list the goals of your research. We hopefully discuss your project prior to sample submission. We have a ton of projects going on at any one time and often need a reminder of what your project is about. Let us know what metabolites and pathways you're primarily interested in and other metabolites you'd like to see but could live without. Also at the bottom, you'll see a pricing table, and we'll send you a quote based upon the number of hours needed to crunch the data and the number of samples you submitted as an estimate. The .csv file is used for us to easily keep track of your samples. Please fill it in completely. Labeling on vials needs to be as simple as possible. Really try to use 3 characters or less. Any excess information you can put in the actual Excel spreadsheet. Labeling needs to be on the top and the sides of the vials, and no labels on tape, or don't use paraffin either to seal up your samples. Shown here on the right hand side is a perfect example of a very well filled out sample submission form. This particular researcher, they just labeled the vials with the numbers, and then they put all the additional meta information inside the Excel spreadsheet. Once all this is done, most of y'all are very excited to receive the data. Let's go through the steps we do in the core before data is available. First, we have to extract your samples, which takes about 2 days per batch. Then we have to prepare your samples and the mass spectrometers to perform the analysis, and that takes about half a day. Next, we run these samples on the mass spectrometer, and each sample takes about an hour to run. Then we extract the raw chromatographic data into something useful, and this takes about an hour per sample. This can be a lot less if the data is perfect. It can be a lot more if we're dealing with new types of samples or samples with low signal. Finally, we have to build a report. Simple reports take about half a day to make. With each additional comparison, this work increases almost exponentially. Of course, this can be much shorter if the data is perfect, but this is often not the case. We are normally 1 to 2 months out for most projects, but this really can vary. Some simple projects can be done very quickly, and sometimes they take a long time. Just depends on how many samples are ahead in the queue. We really attempt to give the best estimate for data delivery, but this can't be guaranteed due to problems with instrumentation, fires in the building, acts of God, etc. If you have any questions concerning this, we really encourage you to contact us, and thanks for listening.